The sky cracked open like an ancient door swinging wide, revealing a monstrous silhouette. In a single moment, the Earth's atmosphere seemed to bend, a dark, titanic shadow blotting out the sun. A signal burst across every frequency, its transmission so powerful it seemed to pulse through human bones. Humanity, this is your ultimatum, submit or be erased. Captain Emily Ward stood frozen, her heart beating in her throat. Around her, the world had gone silent, every eye lifted skyward. The alien vessel that now hovered above Earth, silent, menacing, was unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It defied all logic, its curves not of engineering, but of some ancient art, pulsing with a sickly green energy. On the ground, panic spread like wildfire. But inside the fortified military command center, Captain Ward held her ground, her sharp eyes never leaving the screens before her. She'd seen the Kthar ships before, during a botched mission in a far-flung corner of space, but the Kthar had never come this close. "Captain," said Lieutenant Clara, her voice tight, "we're receiving confirmation. The ultimatum is real. They're asking for a decision within the hour." Ward clenched her fists, her mind racing. The Kthar weren't like any species humanity had encountered before. They were conquerors, born from an ancient empire that stretched across the galaxy, and they were known for one thing, their absolute, merciless superiority. The room buzzed with urgency. As Earth's foremost expert on alien diplomacy, Ward had been summoned to the nerve center when the Kthar message first arrived, but even her expertise seemed powerless in the face of this behemoth. General Rourke, who sat opposite her, wasn't waiting for her analysis. "We don't have time for negotiation," Rourke said, his voice low and harsh. "We launched the counterattack. Prepare Earth's forces to engage." Ward's eyes narrowed. She knew Rourke too well to think he would hesitate. The general, once a decorated hero, had grown into a man of overwhelming conviction. To him, Earth's survival depended on strength, always on the offensive, never passive. But Ward had seen the results of that philosophy too many times. Diplomacy was her weapon of choice, and she wasn't willing to give up just yet. "General," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "we don't know what they want. We don't even understand their technology. If we strike without understanding them, we might destroy any chance of survival." Rourke stood, his broad frame filling the space. He paced, clearly agitated. "And if we don't strike, we risk being obliterated. You think they'll give us time to talk? They've made their intentions clear." Ward opened her mouth, but before she could argue, a voice came through the intercom, sharp and panicked. "Captain, General, you need to see this." The two officers hurried to the main display. The screen flickered and then stabilized, revealing the Kthar ship's underside. The looming vessel had begun to deploy strange metallic constructs, massive drones, each larger than a skyscraper. They hovered ominously over the planet's most populated cities. "They're mobilizing," Ward muttered, dread sinking into her gut. If the Kthar were preparing for a strike, Earth's cities would be reduced to rubble in minutes. The Kthar's weapons were devastating, she knew this from her prior studies. What the Kthar lacked in numbers, they more than made up for in firepower. The comms panel buzzed again, pulling Ward's focus. This time, it was a voice she hadn't expected, Liam Ford, a young scientist working within the classified Xenotech division. He'd been investigating alien communication methods and reverse engineering Kthar technology for years. If anyone could find a solution, it was him. "Captain," Liam's voice crackled through the static. "I've been analyzing their signals. There's something here, a pattern. A code of sorts. If I can break it, we might be able to communicate with them. I think we still have a chance." Ward felt a spark of hope, a small, fragile thing, but it was enough. "Keep working, Liam. I'll handle the military. Just tell me when you need me." Rourke turned on her, his face hard with resolve. "Captain, you have minutes. You really think you can buy us time with messages while our cities burn? We need action now." Ward held his gaze, her voice cold but firm. "And we will act, General. But I won't throw Earth's future into chaos without understanding why the Kthar want to destroy us. She turned back to the console, her fingers flying across the keys as she connected with every remaining scientist who could help decipher the alien code. They had no time to waste. The tension in the room was unbearable. Ward's heart beat faster. In the quiet, the only sounds were the sharp breaths of the officers and the steady hum of technology. But even as the silence stretched on, Ward knew one thing: Earth's fate hung in the balance. "Just give me a little more time," Liam's voice echoed in her ear, desperate. "I think I'm close." Ward's fingers trembled as she stared at the screen. 100,000 things could go wrong in the next few moments, but for the first time in a long while, Captain Emily Ward felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps humanity wasn't so helpless after all. The calm before the storm never lasted long. Captain Emily Ward stood at the head of the command center, watching as the Kthar's massive warship loomed in the sky, its dark form casting an impenetrable shadow over Earth's largest cities. The tension in the room was suffocating. Military officials paced anxiously, their eyes glued to their monitors as seconds ticked away. "Liam," she said, her voice strained but steady. "How's it coming? We need a breakthrough." Liam Ford's voice crackled through the comms, his usual quiet confidence replaced by a flicker of doubt. "I'm getting close, Captain. The patterns in their signals, they're unlike anything we've seen before. But there's something off. I need more time." Ward's jaw tightened. Rourke was waiting for no one. The general had made it clear that diplomacy was not an option. "We can't afford more time, Liam," she said, more to herself than to him. Across the room, General Rourke stood by the large tactical screen, his face shadowed with grim determination. He had made his decision. His voice, hard as steel, echoed across the room. "I won't wait for your miracles, Captain. This isn't a waiting game, it's survival. We launch in 15 minutes. Ward felt a cold fury rise in her chest. Rourke's impatience was a knife in her gut, but she had no choice but to respect the urgency. "We can't just attack without understanding what they want," she snapped, her frustration visible for the first time. "I need more time. Just a few more minutes." Rourke gave her a long, silent look before turning away. "You've got 5 minutes, Captain. I don't think I need to remind you of the stakes." With that, he stalked off, barking orders to his commanders. The room quieted, and Ward turned back to the screens. The Kthar ship remained unmoving, yet its presence seemed to grow more oppressive with each passing second. A low hum filled the command center, the same vibration she had felt when the alien message first arrived. It was a pulse, a signal that seemed to emanate from the very core of the enemy vessel. Liam's voice came again, strained, but with a glimmer of hope. "Captain, I've got it. It's a language, a code. And I think I can break it." Ward exhaled, her muscles unwinding ever so slightly. But the relief was fleeting. She glanced toward the tactical screen where Rourke's forces were assembling for their counterattack. Time was slipping away faster than she could count. "We don't have much longer," Ward muttered, running a hand through her hair. "You need to move faster, Liam. We need to understand them, understand their motive, before we react." Liam's voice faltered. "I'm close. Just give me a few." A sharp, shrill noise cut through the comms, followed by a violent tremor that shook the building. Ward grabbed the edge of the console to steady herself. On the screens, the Kthar drones had begun to move, descending toward Earth's cities with an unsettling speed. They looked like mechanical vultures, their sleek, gleaming forms reflecting the dimming light as they spread out over the globe. "General!" Ward shouted, sprinting toward him. "They're deploying. We need to talk to them now." Rourke barely spared her a glance. "It's too late. If we don't strike now, they'll crush us. I'm giving the order." He spoke into the comms with steely resolve. "Prepare for launch. We engage immediately." Ward's heart sank as the room filled with the sound of scrambling troops. She had to act, and quickly. She turned back to the comms panel, where Liam's voice crackled again, now laced with anxiety. Captain, they're not speaking in words. It's more like a thought pattern transmission. I need a way to respond. If we don't react quickly, they'll interpret our silence as aggression. Ward's mind raced. The Kthar didn't just communicate, they projected their thoughts. To them, language was an ancient, almost primal force that transcended words. Humanity, with its structured systems and languages, was nothing more than static in their world. They had no common ground. But there had to be something that could help them understand. Liam, she said, her voice steady despite the panic bubbling up inside her, try using the resonance signal from their drones. I think it's a key, send it back to them, make them understand we're trying to communicate. There was a long pause before Liam spoke again, his voice tight. It's risky, Captain. They might take it as an act of hostility. But I'll try. Ward glanced at Rourke, whose eyes were locked on the screens. His finger hovered over the command button, ready to give the order to launch. She took a deep breath and turned back to her team. Liam, do it. We'll hold off as long as we can. Rourke's eyes met hers. This is your last chance, Captain. As Liam's voice once again filled the comms, sending the pulse back into the atmosphere, Ward's mind raced. The fate of Earth, the survival of her people, was balanced on the edge of a single, fragile hope. Then, in the deafening silence that followed, something unexpected happened. The drone stopped moving. For a moment, everything went still, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. The silence was unbearable. For what seemed like an eternity, the Kthar drones suspended in the air, motionless, as if considering their next move. The world below held its breath. Ward's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her focus on the readouts before her. A single wrong move could end everything. Captain, Liam's voice crackled in her earpiece. I think it worked. The signal, I sent it back, and there's a response. They're processing it. Ward felt a flicker of hope, quickly buried beneath a rising tide of anxiety. What kind of response? I'm not sure yet, Liam replied, sounding equally cautious. But it's definitely something. A shift in the pattern. If I can isolate it, we might have a chance to communicate more directly. Just give me a minute. Make it fast, Liam, Ward said, glancing toward the tactical screen where Rourke's forces were on standby, awaiting the order to strike. We don't have long before General Rourke acts. And once he gives the command, we can't stop him. Ward's gaze met Rourke's, and for a moment, their eyes locked. The general was a force of nature, unyielding, his stance rigid as he surveyed the situation. He was a man who had seen the brutal consequences of delay and hesitation in his past, each decision weighed with the lives of his people. His resolve was steadfast, but Ward saw the growing impatience in his posture. It was only a matter of time before he pulled the trigger. You're playing a dangerous game, Captain, Rourke said, his voice cold, but not without a hint of respect. If we wait much longer, they'll see our hesitation as weakness. We need to show them that we won't bend. Ward fought to keep her expression neutral, her mind racing. There was so much at stake. If Rourke launched the counterattack without further communication, Earth's fragile hope for survival would shatter. Yet, if she continued to gamble on an unknown signal, humanity might face extinction. The balance between survival and annihilation hung by a thread. You're right, she said slowly, but I'm not going to rush this. If we strike now, we might never know what the Kthar really want. They might see us as nothing more than pests to be crushed. We need to show them that humanity isn't just about force, we're more than that. Rourke's eyes narrowed. He wasn't convinced, but he didn't argue. Instead, he turned to one of his officers and muttered an order. The sound of clattering boots echoed through the command center as the officers moved to their stations. Ward watched them, her pulse quickening. At that moment, the comms panel buzzed, drawing her attention. It was Liam again, his voice urgent but controlled. Captain, I've isolated part of the response. It's not a message, per se, but a calculation. They're measuring our intent. They want to know if we will submit. They're testing us, gauging whether we are worth the effort to conquer. Ward's mind raced, processing the implications of Liam's discovery. The Kthar weren't simply invading, they were evaluating. They wanted to see if humanity was a worthy adversary or an easy conquest. Their ancient culture revered strength, but now Ward knew it wasn't just about dominance, it was about respect. The Kthar would only destroy if they didn't perceive any challenge in humanity. Do you think we can show them we're worth respecting? Ward asked, her voice softer now, more contemplative. She could almost hear the weight of the decision in Liam's tone. I don't know, Liam admitted. But we have to try. If we act on instinct, on the notion that we must simply fight to survive, they will see us as predictable, weak. Ward's gaze flickered back to the tactical screen. Rourke's finger hovered over the command console, his decision close at hand. She could feel the pressure mounting, the time running out. Every second spent debating the unknown made the risk of war grow ever larger. She clenched her fists, taking a deep breath. Liam, she said, her voice firm with resolve. Do what you need to do. I'll buy you as much time as I can. A flash of understanding passed between her and Rourke. He knew what she was doing. He knew the price of inaction. For the first time in this entire crisis, she saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a brief, fleeting hesitation. Ward turned to face him, her expression resolute. General, I understand the urgency. But I can't afford to let this moment slip away. If I'm wrong, we'll fight. But if I'm right, if we can show them we're more than just a threat, there's a chance for peace. Rourke met her gaze, his jaw set, and for a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the systems around them. Finally, he nodded once, sharply. 5 minutes, he said, his voice quiet but authoritative. If this doesn't work, we fight. But you better be right. Ward nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. This was it. There was no turning back. The minutes stretched on, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Ward's thoughts raced, her focus split between Liam's progress and the simmering chaos around her. The Kthar, distant and unmoving, waited for the smallest sign of humanity's intentions. Then, without warning, the response came, a deep, resonating hum that filled the command center. The Kthar ship shifted. It wasn't much, but it was enough. They're listening, Liam said, his voice filled with quiet triumph. They're not going to attack, yet. Ward exhaled, but the battle wasn't over. The true test was only just beginning. The hum of the Kthar ship reverberated through the command center, a deep, almost imperceptible vibration that rattled the walls. It was as though the ship itself was alive, waiting, watching. Captain Emily Ward's hands clenched at her sides, her gaze fixed on the tactical screens where every human movement, every decision, could tip the scales of survival. We've stalled their advance, Liam's voice crackled through the comms, but the tension in his tone was unmistakable. But they're waiting for a response. They're processing us. Ward exhaled, her chest tight with both relief and dread. The drones had stopped their descent, hovering silently above the cities as if to gauge humanity's next move. But this brief respite had done little to ease her concerns. The Kthar had made it clear, they were no mere conquerors, but a race who demanded respect above all else. And so far, humanity had offered nothing but uncertainty. At the far end of the room, General Rourke stood, his back rigid, his eyes scanning the screens with military precision. The time for negotiation had passed in his eyes. The momentary pause from the Kthar, he thought, was nothing more than a sign of weakness. He couldn't afford to wait much longer. Captain, I've given you every chance to prove your point, Rourke said, his voice low but firm. But this is over. We go in. Ward's stomach dropped. She had come so close. The breakthrough Liam had worked for was now their only hope, but it felt like it was slipping through her fingers. The sound of Rourke's command was as chilling as the hum of the Kthar ship, an inevitable wave, unstoppable. 5 minutes, Captain, Rourke added, his eyes narrowing, daring her to respond. Make it work. Now. Ward's mind raced, her pulse quickening. The last attempt to reach the Kthar was fragile, a thin thread in the storm of impending conflict. Her fingers hovered over the comms console, but it wasn't enough. Time was slipping away, and with every passing second, the weight of humanity's fate bore down heavier on her shoulders. Then Liam's voice, tinged with something she hadn't heard before, hope, came through the earpiece. Captain, I've isolated the core signal. They're testing us, yes, but there's more, a kind of invitation. They're acknowledging us, recognizing our capacity for strategy, for resourcefulness. We're not just a threat to them, we're a worthy opponent. Ward's breath hitched, a surge of adrenaline flooding her system. The Kthar hadn't made their final judgment yet. The window for diplomacy was still open. She turned to Rourke, her expression intense. We need to buy time. This is the moment to show them what humanity truly is. Rourke's gaze hardened. You've had your time, Captain. Ward didn't look away. She knew the stakes better than anyone. Just 5 more minutes, she implored, each word heavy with the knowledge that this request might be her last. 5 minutes to prove we're worth their respect. Then, if it doesn't work, we fight. The general hesitated for a fraction of a second before giving a sharp nod. He stepped back, muttering to his officers, and for the first time since the start of the crisis, Ward saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For a moment, the future seemed within her grasp. Liam's voice returned, filled with more conviction than before. Captain, I've set the signal to repeat at their frequency. They're not responding to aggression. They're responding to challenge. If we show them we can adapt, that we can think beyond simple force, it might be enough. Ward turned back to the screen, her mind working faster than ever. The Kthar hadn't attacked yet. If they had intended to destroy humanity, they would have done so already. Instead, they were waiting. They were watching. The signal is going out now, Liam continued. It's unlike anything we've used before. It's both a challenge and an invitation, a question of whether we can match their strength with our own. The seconds stretched into infinity. Ward's fingers brushed the edge of the console as the hum from the Kthar ship shifted, a strange resonance building. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. It was enough. Then, the screen flickered to life. The Kthar ship moved, not with the violence of war, but with an eerie, graceful precision. The drones turned, retreating slowly, almost as if acknowledging the challenge humanity had presented. Ward's heart leaped. They're pulling back, she breathed, hardly daring to believe it. Liam's voice was quiet, all creeping into his words. They're not backing down. They're respecting us. Rourke turned sharply, eyes wide with disbelief. What? What's happening? We've shown them our strength, Ward said, her voice filled with quiet triumph. They're not attacking. Not yet. The Kthar didn't just see humanity as an obstacle anymore, they saw them as an equal, a force that would take more than a simple conquest to defeat. Ward had done it. Against all odds, she had shown the Kthar that humanity was more than capable of challenging them. But even as the tension began to ease, Ward knew the battle was far from over. The Kthar had respected humanity's strength, but the question remained, would they now seek to forge a new understanding, or would they continue their march toward domination? The future of Earth hung in the balance, but for the first time, Ward felt a surge of hope, a glimmer that maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't meant to be erased.